My name's Russell Spatz. I'm an alcoholic. So, I was away for, believe me, I wish I was here with you. I had to go on this 15-day cruise, across the Panama Canal. I don't know how to describe this thing for you. It's, you start off in Miami and you go south. And there's something south, I think it's Mexico or something, and all these different countries, I don't know.
Gulf of America.
Whatever it is, there's stuff. And you go down to this canal, it's like, and then they go across it. And there's all these countries. I don't even know what the countries are. There's different countries, Honduras, Nicaragua, I don't know these countries. Mm-hmm. And they all speak Spanish. And I went with like 15 people, my wife's families. They only speak Spanish. I'm the only gringo. So when the Sandinistas come or whoever comes to kidnap you, they say, get the American kid. You know what I mean? They go. You go across the deal. I didn't go on one. They all went on excursions because they understand the language, and I'm not getting off the ship. So and they go across the canal, and then they come out on the other side, and they go up the western coast of the United States. You go through like 3 time things.
Time zones.
Yeah. They go these, and you end up in Los Angeles. You get off the ship, and you get on a plane. You fly 6 hours back to Miami. So I said, and that is the last 15 days on a boat, and that is the last cruise I will ever take. So help me God. And it was outrageous. It was there were 4,100 people on the boat. The youngest I met was 65 years of age. Up to 95. It was like an assisted living facility on the water. They all had like these things. There were people with scooters and everything like that. I'm looking around. Listen, this is true. Like every 12 hours, they'd stop the ship to have a burial at sea. Throw some guy overboard. I was watching one guy, I swear to God, I was sitting next to one of the officers. I swear I saw his hands were moving. I said, that guy's still alive. He said, close enough. I mean, enough. You don't want to start. On this boat, you don't want to stay. Believe me, you don't want to sit still on this boat too long, Don't nod off. You stick with the fish. It was a sad situation. It was tough, but it was a tough deal, They had this meeting on the boat. These Friends of Bill. I always go to these Friends of Bill's things, and it was different for me. It's like, I don't really go to many meetings that are like. It was like a regular A meeting.
You weren't speaking.
Like this is supposed to be a regular A meeting. I mean, it hasn't been. I mean, I know I'm not regular in A or anything like that, but this was like a regular A meeting. Nobody's talking about God, and I don't know what the hell they were talking about. But then I started talking like I talked to you guys. That was the end of that deal. So, and I was saying, I mean, what am I doing here? And so I'm standing in front of one of the elevators on the 16th floor. I mean, the ship was big, and it's got this big mirror. And I'm seeing, I mean, these people were old, and I'm looking at the mirror, and of course I'm in the mirror, and I see all these people passing around me and through me, I mean, throngs of old, decrepit people, and I looked at it and I blended. It's not like I stood out, you know what I mean? All these old people in Russell, you know what I mean? It was a sad awakening, that kind of deal. So we're going to talk about something. Jimmy, I said, so what do you want me to do? I left on 7, which I thought we did a pretty good job on 7. The 7 was good. And I said, well, you want me to do 8, 9? I could start at 10. Don't matter to me. I never talk about the steps anyway, but I mean, you can talk about whatever you want. He said, no, do 8, 9 or 8, 9 or whatever. He said, okay. So he asked me, he said, well, so what are you going to do? I said, I'm going to do 8 and 9, but it's not going to be 8 and 9 the way you think 8 and 9 is. It's going to be a different 8 and 9. You've never heard of an 8 and 9. It's going to be different. Okay, so, or maybe it won't be. We'll see. I mean, beauty's in the eyes of the beholder, right?
You're beautiful.
Oh, okay. I'm going to read you something, okay? This is like, what's that movie I always talk about? What? Pulp Fiction. Starts in the beginning, goes to the end, goes back and forth, and then you have to like put the whole fucking thing together. You know what I mean? You'll have to figure it out. I'm not going to do it for you. One guy will say, I have no idea what the hell that guy was talking about. One guy will say, yeah, he was talking about this, and that had to do with this, and all that sort of stuff. So let me see. I'm going to read you something. Okay? I sort of like that. I'm going to read this deal. So this is on 8 and 9. But not really. Yes, it is. It's about everything. It's about everything. Because the problem is, this is a generalization. All generalizations are dangerous, including this one. But here's a little generalization. I get a lot of calls every day from people in AA. And I generalize this. I get basically 2 types of calls. I get a call from somebody in AA who's extremely upset. People who are very, very upset because of something that is happening in their life. It doesn't necessarily have to be something that's happening to them. It could be something that's happening in Afghanistan. It doesn't matter. It's something that's happening in the world. No, I'm okay. It's something that's happening in the world that's bothering them. Maybe it's money, property, prestige, romance, whatever. They have something happening in the world that's bothering them. And they're just crazed about it. They could have 10 years. They could have 15 years. They could have 20 years. As a matter of fact, somebody called me up this morning with 20 years. There's something that was really bothering them about something. There was actually a lot of good things happening in their lives, but there was one thing that was bothering them that they just couldn't get in front of. And then the other calls I get are people that want to talk to me about God or the Lord, because I'm a Christian. They want to talk to me about God. They want to talk to me about Scripture. They want to ask me questions. And the people that want to talk to me about God, they're never upset. I'm just telling you, this is just, look, the people that always want to talk to me about God, they're never upset. And the people that don't want to talk about God are always upset. So, I got to keep it simple, because I used to be bright. And I could, figure all these things out and the permutations and all sort of stuff. But now I just sort of I look basically at how people are. Because what difference does it make if you can't make the difference? What does it matter if you've got 22 years if you're a fucking batshit? If nobody wants what you have? What does it matter? Why do I give a shit about your feelings if you're a whack job? Why do I want to waste 5 minutes of my time talking to you about what you think? I mean, I have maybe, what do I got, like a week left on the fucking planet? I want to spend 5 minutes with you, tell me about why you feel the way you do? I mean, I could be talking about one of those guys that want to talk to me about God. I mean, why would I want to waste my time talking to somebody who's not well and is never going to be well and doesn't want to be well? You know what I mean? Well, of course, one of the reasons I talk to people is because that's my purpose. That's the only purpose I have, really. And it's a godly purpose to, talk about him and tell other people about him and try to make disciples and all that sort of stuff. And that's the most important thing in my life right now. Never used to be the most important thing in my life, but it is now. So, of course, I give everybody a chance and I talk to them because I want to try to help people. And that's the reason why, because I love them and I have compassion for them. Have you figured out yet that this isn't heaven? This is not heaven. I'm a guy, I believe in heaven, going to heaven. This is not heaven. As a matter of fact, this isn't even the Garden of Eden. It ain't. This is the place of wrath and tears. Amen. This is the real world. This is a horror story. Religious people call this a fallen world. It is a fallen world. You know what I mean? People running around looking for pleasure, looking for romance, looking for acceptance, looking for money, looking for anything so they don't want to blow their fucking brains out. That's what you got here. You can go to 15 million. You can go to 15 million meetings. You can do the whole bit, every step in the world. You're still stuck here, and it's really crappy. You know, it's really crappy. But there's a way out. You know, one of the great things about drinking. You know, I went to a meeting today. They were talking about being grateful. One of the reasons I came in here, and one of the reasons most of you came in here, is because you wanted to stop drinking. Now, there's maybe many reasons to want to stop drinking. There's at least two I know of. One of them is they want to stop drinking because they want to change their they don't want to go to jail, or they don't want to go to prison. They want to get their wife back. They want to get their job back. They want to get money back. They want to get something. And it's usually something to do with the stuff that all those guys are whining to me about when they call me up on the phone. You know what I mean? You know, the same stuff that the guy with 10 years who has done all the steps and has double digit and thinks he's okay now, when he's whining to me about the same shit that the guy who came a day with 1 day is there for, to get that crap back. Do you understand? There's no difference. There's no difference between the guy with 10 or 15 years who's crying to me about his problems. There's no spiritual difference between the guy who's crying to me about his problems because he doesn't have any money, because his wife left him, because he hasn't gotten laid, or whatever it is, between that guy and the guy with 1 day who's concerned with the same thing. No difference. Zero. But what happens is there's another kind of reason to stay sober. And sometimes you don't really even know which one is which, why you're here or why you're not here, until you've been around for a while. Because if you're here for the wrong reason, then things happen like as soon as you get the woman back, as soon as you get the money back, as soon as you get, you know, all the crap back that you think you need to get back, and you're sober 2, 3, 5, 7 years, whatever it is. If that is the primary reason you're here, to not drink so you can get all that stuff back, what happens is as soon as you start getting it back, you become complacent. You rest on your laurels, you stop going to meetings, you start getting after the other stuff, and those are the guys that have 20 years or 22 years that end up drinking again. They fall back, they end up drinking again. But there are people that come in here because even though they've lost everything, it's not really about getting stuff back. The losing everything has gotten to a place where they got down to their knees and they've surrendered. And they don't care if they get anything back, they just want to stop drinking. They just need help. You know, they're lost in this world. They'd rather kill themselves. You know, this idea of, you know, I want to die. I wish God would just take me and kill me. You know what I mean? I'd rather die than live in this crappy world. And they're here. It's not about the stuff. It's about they don't want to ever feel the way they're feeling right now. And so what happens, they both come in here and they're both sort of grateful, and they both get excited about the fact that they're not drinking and they got 6 months, 7 months, 10 months, 12 years, whatever the hell it is. They're both excited about that stuff, and they're both grateful about not drinking. And here's sort of like a difference. One difference. The people who have stopped drinking and come in here, and the reason they hang up here because they see a whole bunch of people, they know they're fucking crazy. I mean, you know you're crazy. I know how you know you're crazy, because you wouldn't hang out in a church or in any place where there were, quote, normal people and do this crap. You understand what I'm saying? Because you would feel uncomfortable. But I put you in a group of people who are absolutely fucking nuts. You know what I mean? You feel good about that. It makes you feel good just hanging around these people. Because you know that not only are they not drinking, but you know they got the same You don't hang around us because we're perfect. You hang around us because we're crazy, just like you. We got that same sort of craziness. The way they talk, the way we are, that nobody thinks they're better than anybody else or worse than anybody else, you know. We just like hanging out with each other because we're still nuts and we've got the same kind of craziness. You know, that's our deal. And so we hang out here. And what happens is when we get in here, what we have is we become grateful for not drinking. And so we are no longer slaves to King, you know, that they say denizens of the realm of King Alcohol. We are no longer slaves to King Alcohol. We are no longer in bondage. We have a freedom. We've been given a freedom of drinking. And we're excited about that. And we talk about that. And there's nothing wrong about that. But most people, unfortunately, for reasons I'm not smart enough to figure out, stop there. They think that that's what AA is all about. Freedom from alcohol. That's really the only thing they talk about at meetings. All they talk about at meetings is freedoms from alcohol. Even when they seemingly talk about the steps, they're not really talking about the steps. What they're really talking about is do the fourth step or else you might drink. You need to do the fifth step or else if you don't do it, you might drink. You need to help other people because it's found that intensive work with other alcoholics will guarantee you won't drink. Everything's about the drinking, and the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, you can find parts in there where it seems like that is true. But within this book, which is all about not drinking, how not to drink, by just going through these steps and following simple directions and simple rules, you may not drink for 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And it sounds great. You know, don't worry. You know, you can do it. As long as you don't drink, you're going to be okay. You know, don't drink and go to meetings. You're going to be okay. But what they don't explain to you is that when you get to 20 years or 25 years or something like that, many of the people that are here, like right now, will be gone. And there will be very, very few people left sober for 30, 35, 40 years. Then you won't know that because you're not seeing it from not that I'm smart. I'm not smarter than anybody. I've just been around long enough. I've been around longer, you know? I've been beaten up. I've seen them go and I've seen them die. I've seen all the hot shots die and go and everything like that. And you see that there's a hell of a lot of people with less than 20 years and there's nobody between 20 and 40. And so where are all those people, you know? And you start hearing about people who drank after 10 years, drank after 5 years, drank after 6 years. And so you believe them when they tell you, well, they stopped going to meetings. Well, maybe they did. Maybe I'm sure that's something that they noticed. That doesn't mean that's why they drink. Why did they stop going to meetings? Then you see people that drank who were going to meetings. Then you see people who didn't drink and are going to meetings, but they're miserable. And they call me up and they got 20 years and they're miserable. So what difference does it make if you got 20 years and you haven't had a drink and you're as miserable as the guy with, 1 day, still worrying about what you don't have and what you have or anything like that? Because there are people that get freedom from drinking. They get relieved. They get the freedom from drinking. They don't have to drink anymore. They've lost the obsession of drinking. They may go back, and there's a difference between that freedom and something called, it's in the big book, the new freedom. There's a freedom from drinking, and then there's a new freedom. And never assume that the freedom from drinking is the same thing as the new freedom. They're not even close. You see, drinking is really only a symptom of the disease. Now, listen, this is what the book says. Drinking is a symptom of the disease. It's not the disease. Now, surely I'd be the first one to say, if you don't stop drinking, you're not going to get the new freedom. You better stop drinking. But you know something? That is the first miracle. But that's not the miracle that's going to keep you sober. Freedom from drinking will never keep you sober. Because the real disease centers in your mind, not your body. And you can have the freedom from drinking without having the freedom from being insane. Because what you realize as life goes on, and I don't mean to say this in such a way that, like, look, I finally arrived or anything, because I have not, okay? But what you notice as time goes on through 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, you notice that you got a few more bondages. You realize you're a slave to fear. You realize you're a slave to worrying about what other people think about you. You realize that you're a slave to guilt. You realize you're a slave to all sorts of financial things. You realize you realize there's so many things you're in bondage. You realize you're a slave to pleasure. You realize that you're a slave to the things of this world, what you have, what you don't have, and comparing yourselves. And you realize you're as you go along, you realize that even though you're not drinking and you're going to a lot of meetings, and you better go to a lot of meetings, because if you don't go to a lot of meetings, you really feel the slavery. You start showing, says, man, I needed this meeting, because you can't take it in this. You know, I love the King David. You know, we have this. You ever read this 23rd Psalm? I love the 23rd Psalm because it describes us in our sobriety. It says, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. You know what? When David says, I walk through the valley, you know what the valley of the shadow of death is? Right here. This is the valley of the shadow of death. The money problems are looming over you. The romance problems are looming over you. The aloneness problems are looming over you. You know, the health problems are looming over you. All that shit is looming over you. It's the valley of the shadow of death. There are people in AA, I'm one of them, you may be one of them, and you may have realized this, that will actually think about suicide. Not that they're necessarily going to do it, but it'll pop in their bed and says, I wish I was fucking dead. They'll be 10 years sober, they'll be telling themselves they wish they'd be better off dead than being alive on this frickin' planet. Sober, going to meetings. And they'll be, you know something? And they'll have the freedom from not drinking in their pocket. And they're still miserable. So I got to tell you something. If this book only talks about freedom from drinking, you're in big fucking trouble. You know, one of the great things about Alcoholics Anonymous, when you first come in here, you know, where you're looking, where am I going to go to stop drinking? Where am I going to go to stop drinking? You know, and you come in here, you see all these people that are just like you because they're crazy, and you hear them talking. They talk like you, they look like you, they understand you, and none of them are drinking. You're thinking to yourself, I can't even envision myself not drinking. I can't think about not drinking. You know, how can I ever not drink? What am I going to do when my daughter gets married? And you see all these people not drinking, do everything, and it gives you hope. So where do you go to stop fearing? Where do you go to stop worrying? Where do you hope to stop having that? Where, if the big book is back and says drinking is but a symptom of our disease, our real disease centers on our mind, not our bodies, where's the answer in this book about all the other stuff that we're in bondage to, that are enslaved? It says there's a new freedom and a new happiness that would be rocked in the fourth dimension of existence, experience much of heaven, no peace. Where do you go? Where's that stuff? It's in this book. It's in this book. It's right here in this book. There's another book in this, hiding in this book. There's a book that newcomers see up until they're 25 years sober, and it's all about not drinking. And there's another book in this book that you can't see, that you may not be able to see until years go by, because they don't talk about that book in AA. Because if they start talking about that book in AA, people say, you're killing newcomers. It's probably true. We're probably killing newcomers. But we may be I'm probably killing newcomers, but I may be saving somebody with 11 years. I may be saving somebody with 11 years. I know Pat Rogan tells the story about coming here one night, as a matter of fact, and he had some time. You may be saving other people. I'm going to read you something in the big book, and I'm going to ask you a question. This is on page 60. This is like one of the first things you read. Newcomers read this stuff. I'm going to read it to you. I'm going to see whether you and I read it different. I may read it differently. It's very simple. I like to keep it simple, okay? A is that we were alcoholic and could not manage our own lives. B is that probably no human power could relieve our alcoholism. Have you guys heard this before? That God could and would if he were sought. Has anybody ever heard that? You ever? So what does that mean?
Got to seek him.
What does that mean? Well, let me help you out with that, because there's a paragraph right afterwards. Let me ask you this question. Being convinced. So what does being convinced mean? It means you're absolutely convinced. Right? There's no argument about it, right? No argument. None. You do it your way. You have your program. I have my program. All these programs. You do it your way. You believe in God. I don't believe in God. It's okay to be an atheist. Being convinced. We were at step 3, which is that we decided to turn our will and our lives over to God as we understood him. Not over to the care of God, over to God as we understood him. Now here's the question. Just what do we mean by that? Just what do we mean by that? You know what that is? That's a question. Have you ever sat down for about a day or 2 or 3 or 5 and said, what do they mean by that? Let me tell you something. That may be important. How you understand that, whether you understand that, whether you think it's important or not, may be the difference between you, whether you make 10 years or 20 years or you drink again. No, I'm wrong. That will make the difference. Not drinking won't make the difference. Going to meetings won't make the difference. Doing the steps won't make the difference. None of this stuff will make the difference. Sponsoring 10 million people won't make the difference. Understanding what they mean by turning your will and your life over to the care of God will make the difference. That's the only thing that will make the difference. And then it says, and just what do we do about that? That's just a simple thing. You see, that statement, if you read it in the book about not drinking, you'll never understand it. But if you read that statement as being the most important statement in the book, one of the most important statements in the book, right up there with abandon yourself to God, right up there with your real reliance must be on God. He will show you how to create the fellowship you crave. Soon you'll be involved in something called the fellowship of the Spirit with a capital S. That statement, as long as a bunch of other statements that are sprinkled throughout the book, are statements that have to do with the new freedom, not the freedom from drinking, the freedom from worrying about what other people think about you. You don't think that freedom exists? In the big book it says one of the promises, I think it's probably the most important promise. I think it's the promise. Now you guys are all alcoholics, right? So you understand about anxiety, don't you? You understand about fear? You guys ever wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning worrying about something? You ever find yourself worrying about something having to do with your life, which you're scared to talk to other people about, because you're worried about what they're going to think about you? You ever go through that? All the time. You go through that all the time, don't you? Your life is corrodedly riddled with fear. You don't drink and you go to meetings and you're scared shitless of other people. When you go up to share, you're worried about what they're going to think about you. You very carefully pick your words because you don't want them talking about you behind your back. You walk away from the meeting, you're worrying about what they're thinking about you. You're worried about what you're thinking about yourself. But you're okay because you got that freedom from drinking. But you know what the big book says one of the promises are? And this is a promise that takes about 30 years to get. So that's, the drinking, man, that's a gimme. That's what God says, okay, here's the freedom from drinking. That's a gift. That's a gift. But then there's another freedom. It says we'll have freedom from fear of other people and financial insecurity. Fear of people and of financial insecurity. So, what would your life be like if you never worried about what other people were thinking about you? What would your life be like if you had to make a decision about something or do something or say something, whatever it is, and the thought, yeah, but what will they think about me? What would your life be like if you lost your job, but you never worried about, but what will people think about me if they know I'm broke? What would your life be like if you didn't have fear? You know what this book is about? It's losing that fear. It's not about drinking. You already got the drinking in your pocket. But if you don't get rid of the fear thing, the drinking thing happens like that. Bam, you're not drinking. Happens like that. The fear thing, fear of other people and what they think about you, fear of economic insecurity, all those other fears that center in your mind, not your body, that's a good 15, 20, 25, 30 years. So here's what happens. Between, I'll say just for laughs and giggles, because I have no idea what happens in year one. I can't remember year one. I was so fucked up and crazy, year 1 or 2 or 3. But let's say like somewhere in the first 20 years, you work on something called steps 8 and 9 and 10, What do you do for the first, I don't know what you guys did for the first 10, 20 years. You become sort of experts on trying to fix up things you screwed up. You said something, you did something, you feel guilty about something. Here's a story. I got a guy a while ago in a divorce case. I represented the wife, where he signed what's called a postnuptial agreement, and he had a lot of money, where he gave his wife all his money for the next 20 years. Now, let me explain something to you. Imagine that. You're making, $500,000 a year, and you give your wife every cent for the next 20 years, and you keep like $50,000 a year. You did that, Sheldon, didn't you? Something like that.
My wife's sitting right there. What do you?
Oh, right. Now, listen to me. Now, here's the deal. I know. Now, here's the deal. Oh, relax. Here's the deal. So, now I'm going to tell you something. You're going to have to trust me. This is a lawyer. That would never happen in a court of law. Ever. And he did that. And he was intelligent, smart, and he just signed away his life. So one of the things I was thinking, I said, why would a guy do that? Why would an intelligent, professional man do that? Because he left his wife for another woman. And he felt guilty. Unfortunately, guilt is a good motive for doing that, but it's really not a good defense. You can't say, well, Judge, I don't want to pay that money because I did it because I felt guilty. I said, well, you felt guilty because you were guilty, So what you have to understand is for people like us, he may have been a people like us, for people like us, we end up for the next 20 years with these urges and these desires and these motives in our mind that are playing with our brain, that have to do with guilt, it has to do with fear, has to do with greed, has to feeling less than, all these things going on in our mind, and they don't leave just because we stop drinking. They're the real dis-ease that makes us disease, and sometimes they cause us to do stupid shit and say stupid things and send stupid emails and hurt people. And when we do that, we go nuts. Maybe we drink, maybe we don't drink, you know what I mean? But we go crazy. And we call up me or somebody else and say, and then you did this, and then you did that, and I don't know what I'm doing. And we just go nuts and everything, and we worry, and we can't get to sleep at night and everything like that. And we go into this thing, and they give us these little things called 8 and 9. We do like an inventory or a 4-step inventory. Where was I wrong? We figured out where we were wrong. Say, what are the amends? And here's the amends. And then we do the amends, and we do what we have to do. And then all of a sudden, it's dispelled, and we feel okay, and we don't drink, and we can move on. And what I found is I worked those steps, those 9 steps, because one of the things I like to talk about when I'm talking about the steps is not the mechanics. I can go through the mechanics. This is how you do step 8, and this is how you do step 9, and it comes out of the 4-step. One of the things I like to talk about is, why are we doing this stuff? Now, the one reason why you may think of is so that we don't blow our brains out, and so we have some semblance of happiness, you know what I mean? And we don't have these things playing with our mind, which is true, but there's another reason. The other reason is in the second book. That's the not drinking reason. The not drinking reason, that's one reason, but there's another reason we do them. We do these things over and over and over and over again. And what I think you'll find with most people is that you end up getting really involved in 8, 9, and 10 during the first 10 or 20 years. But if you understand this verse that I just read, being convinced, we were at step 3, which is that we decided to turn our will and our life over to the care of God as we understood Him, where you're focused on God and you're convinced that God is the answer, and you're involved in the 6th step where you're trying to grow in His image and likeness. There reaches a time where there actually reaches a time in your life that you're not signing stupid documents and you're not saying stupid things. And you find you waking up in the morning, you find that you haven't made an amends all day. And the reason you find you haven't made an amends all day is you find you haven't felt guilty about anything you've done all day. And you find because you haven't opened up your mouth and said something stupid all day. And you haven't hurt anybody all day. And then it happens the next day. And then it happens the next day. And you might even start thinking to yourself, man, I don't think I'm working a program. I'm supposed to be taking inventory and making amends and doing all this sort of stuff because of all the screw-ups I did all day. And all of a sudden you realize that you're not living that life anymore. Because it's not with you, it's not about the freedom from drinking anymore, because you're free of that. But you have now the new freedom. You've been born again. You've got the new freedom. You're free of your own personality. You're doing 6 step stuff. That's a tongue twister. Because you're growing in the image and likeness of God. And you find that, you may have a first thought, but then all of a sudden you have a second thought and you just shut up and you don't say anything. And it's not that you're not working a program, but you're living a program. It's not that you're not doing the big book or the steps, you're living the big book and the steps. I mean, sure, if you happen to, somehow glitch or screw up or anything like that, you know how to do it, an 8-step or a 9-step or 4-step or ask for help. You understand? But you've changed. And now when you read this book, you're not even reading about the first book about the not drinking. You're reading the second book about being rocketed in the 4th dimension of existence and experiencing much of heaven. So, the men I ran into, I got to tell you something, who had 30, 40 years, my sponsors and mentors, they weren't running around feeling guilty and signing papers because they felt guilty or cheating on their wives or, somehow off the wall all the time or, irrational or, going into mood swings and stuff like that because they had gone through that part of the life. I mean, the 8th step and the 9th step are absolutely essential, but what they're really supposed to do is not only help you live a livable life so you're not in constant pain, but they change you. Every time you see that you screwed up and why you screwed up and how you screwed up, and you have to level your pride and talk to a sponsor. He says, you got to go up and go to that person and apologize. You got to pay. Every time you do that, you may not perceive, you may feel better, but what you don't see is how it's changed you. How it's changed you. And now you got 25 years and you're steady. Remember we talked about steady? I mean, how did the steady happen? How did the losing fear happen? You know, it happened as a result of doing all these sort of these steps that we do in the beginning over. It's like, remember Karate Kid, wax on and wax off? Wax. Why am I doing wax on? So we could have a fluid movement and just, you know, it was all about, you're doing all these steps and you think you're doing it to make yourself feel better so you don't drink, which is true, but it's not the whole story. But then you look back over your life, you know, you got, you know, whatever, 30, 40 years, whatever it is, and you find that you're not making amends and you have no need to make amends. It's not because you're cocky, but you haven't hurt anybody. And people are actually calling you up because they want to speak to you. And people are telling you how much they appreciate what you did for them. You know what I mean? And somehow you've changed. Because you've been doing step 8 and 9 and 4 and 5 and 10 and all these things. And you're now a completely different person. And so when you go to meetings, what do you want to talk about? What do you want to hear about? Who do you want to hang out with? Even it says, you know what it says in the big book? It says your real reliance has to be on God. Because you have already answered the question in your mind. Well, you know what this statement means. It means exactly what it says. You know what the statement means. You made a decision to turn your entire life over to God. Amen. And you know what that means? That means you're no longer in this world. You're in this world, but you're not of this world. You're not the. You know what I did on the boat? I stayed on the boat the entire time, 15 days. You say, well, what did you do on the boat 15 days? Nothing. I did nothing. I ate a little. So I'm not perfect. I cannot lie.
A little?
A little. Really, I tried to be good. You know something? I walked through the casino. Nothing. I used to sober. I go on all these cruises. I was constantly, I come off the cruises broke. Because I had to get, because you know why? Because I'm an alcoholic. You know what that means? I want excitement. I can't stand boredom. I can't stand sitting in one place. I can't stand being still. I got to sit there and bet and win $500 or $1,000, and then you know what I got to do? I got to go give it all back because it's not the money. I need excitement. I need to get off the boat and I need to walk around and get kidnapped or something. I need excitement. I need a woman. I need a man. I need this. I need that. I need the world and everything into it. I need the worldly clamors. I'm addicted to them. I'm not drinking, but I'm addicted to everything else. And you know what I did? I just walked around the ship, read some stuff, watched some things about God and things. I was fine, Every once in a while I go to one of the meetings there that they had, talk about God, hang out and stuff like that kind of thing. So, I mean, that's what I want you guys to experience. I want you guys to, you've already got the freedom from alcohol. I want you to see, that's that great song, I'm no longer a slave to fear. I don't want you to be slaves to fear. I want you to know, I'll tell you, remember when you walked in your first AA meeting and you saw that there were all these people that had the same problem you had and they didn't have to drink and everybody knew about not drinking. You could go up to people and talk to them and they'd say, well, I don't know how I'm going to stay sober. I'm supposed to go to this party. I'm supposed to go to this. And they all had the answers for you. Remember all that? It was incredible, right? What if you could do that with fear? What if you were in a group of people where none of them had fear? And you had fear, and you could go up to anyone who says, well, I have a fear of this or that, and you knew that you could get that. You could have that. You could grab that. And you could live a life without fear of people and of economic insecurity and everything like that. Not that you're economically secure, Not that you're rich. I remember saying to Ray O'Keefe, when am I going to have financial security? He says, you're never going to have financial security. I said, well, it says in the big book. He says, no. He says, you'll never have it. He says, Russ, he says, you'll always be broke. It just won't bother you, you know? And somehow that made me feel better. I don't know why. So thank you very much. God bless.